Coming to you from the Endless Library, where every book is read and every spoiler discussed. Join us as we dig into the lives of fictional people who cannot defend themselves.
Before the dinosaurs escaped, before the chaos began, Crichton had to build the park. And today we're digging into how he did that. To quote the book, or the movie, or both, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think whether they should. I think I'm getting the quote a little wrong, but that's where we're at today on Jurassic Park. Part 1. Slava, give us a rundown of author and plot. Let's get into it.
In summary, Jurassic Park is a science fiction thriller novel written by Michael Crichton. It was first published in 1990, and it chronicles a story of an eccentric genetic CEO who builds an amusement park containing live dinosaurs cloned from ancient DNA. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing.
The book was followed by a sequel in 1995, The Lost World. Jurassic Park has been adapted into one of the most successful movie franchises of all time.
That surprises me.
Really?
Yeah.
There's the IP is great. There's a movie coming out, or it came out just now. People are shitting on it, but there's a movie out.
People shit on everything.
17 years after his death? Yeah, of course, it's the internet.
Just that it's one of the most, I guess I don't know what that phrase means. Is it compared to 10 other IPs? Is it 3? Is it top 3? So, sorry, keep going.
Well, the first movie released in 93, and then the entire franchise going to 22, that's grossed over $5 billion worldwide. And there's a new movie that just came out as the recording of this episode.
Jump change.
$5 billion, it's not as big as Avatar or Titanic, but for what it is a successful franchise. When people say of all time, meaning there is a scale for that, right? In that scale, there's probably 10, 20, 50 movies compared to the hundreds and thousands or even hundreds of thousands that come out. There's some that stand apart. So I think that's what that means. That's what it means to me for sure.
Yes.
But it's a successful franchise. There's a movie that's coming out, and what we're going to be covering, it's the audiobook version and the 2015 mass market edition of the novel by Ballantine Books. So for those who are reading or have read, those are the versions we are using. The author of this book, as already mentioned, is Michael Crichton. He graduated summa cum laude from Harvard College and received his MD from Harvard Medical School. And for those who care about this kind of stuff and are nerds, he was a postdoctoral fellow at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies, researching public policy. So his works are not just pulled out of thin air. They're definitely fiction, but I think he's writing them to not only tell a story, but going to share his views with the world. He had an immense interest in computer modeling that went back for years before writing Jurassic Park. He also has done multiple discriminate analysis of Egyptian crania carried out on an IBM 7090 computer at Harvard. So he has studied this stuff intensely. Crichton's first bestseller, The Andromeda Strain, was published when he was still a medical student. He later worked full-time on film and writing and has become one of the most popular writers in the world, selling over 200 million books. And his books have been translated into 38 languages. When he talked about Jurassic Park, this is in his own words, he said, "I wrote a screenplay about cloning a pterodactyl from fossil DNA in 1983, but the story wasn't convincing. I worked on it for several years, trying to make it more credible. Finally, I decided on a theme park setting and wrote a novel from the point of view of a young boy who was present when the dinosaur escaped. I sent the book to the usual people who read my first draft. Over the years, I've come to rely on 5 or 6 people who read my drafts. They were all in agreement. They hated Jurassic Park. I got angry reactions such as, 'Why would you write a book like this?' But when I asked them to explain exactly why they hated it, they couldn't put their finger on it. They just hated it. Hated every bit of it. I wrote another draft. They hated that one too, just as strongly as the one before. Whatever I had done in the latest draft, it hadn't helped. I wrote another draft, but the results remained the same. Finally, one of the readers said that they were irritated with the story because they wanted it from the POV of an adult, not a kid point of view. They said, I want to be in this story. So I rewrote it as an adult story, and then everybody liked it. That's where we got Jurassic Park from. But the summary of the Jurassic Park, it introduces its premise with a warning about the corruption of modern science. It is unchecked, based on profit, and unparalleled in human history in its achievements. Molecular biology is particularly dangerous and profitable field, which has seen massive growth in recent years. This is kind of in-world summary. This is not necessarily what's happening in the real world, but to some degree it could be. In an attempt to get ahead of its rivals, InGen, a company run by the eccentric John Hammond, fools investors into funding the creation of an amusement park containing real live dinosaurs. So right from the beginning, in the opening scene, there's a man who has been violently attacked. He is rushed from a helicopter to the local medical clinic in Costa Rica. IGen employee Ed Regis gets off the plane with the injured victim, but refuses to admit he was attacked by dinosaurs. The victim vomits blood, has a seizure, dying on the floor of the clinic. This scene foreshadows the horrors to come. A few days later, reports emerge about lizards attacking infants in their cribs, but they are no ordinary lizards, and the symptoms that result from their bites are severe. The lizards are never officially connected to the park, but it is heavily implied that they originated there and are, in fact, dinosaurs. We also have Dr. Grant, a paleontologist, and Ellie Sattler, another paleontologist. They are on an expedition in North Montana when they receive a visit from John Hammond. He requests they come and see his marvelous park, assuring them they will appreciate what he had created. He also summons Ian Malcolm, a mathematician who specializes in chaos theory and believes the park is destined to fall into ruin. He invites his grandchildren and other various characters who will meet along the way. The visitors arrive and begin the tour, enthralled by the dinosaurs they see. Nedry is a rogue employee who forces a power shutdown in the park so he can steal and sell some dinosaur embryos. With the power in the park shut down, the electric track-powered Land Cruisers become stuck on the track outside the T-Rex enclosure. Meanwhile, Sattler is with Harding following some small dinosaurs in a gas-powered Jeep. They hear Muldoon, one of the park employees, on the radio asking for the vehicle to return to the lodge. Muldoon takes Gennaro, another character which we'll meet, and goes out looking for survivors, but only finds Malcolm. Malcolm's theory, called the Malcolm effect, is coming true before their eyes. Chaos is inevitable. Grant and the children are over a disaster several times, including a stampede, herds of carnivores, engaged in mating rituals. Now that's going to come into play probably in the next part, because they're supposed to be girl dinosaurs, but somehow more dinosaurs are being born. Later on in the book, Grant, the children, Sattler, Muldoon, and Gennaro all survive the chaos of Jurassic Park. They manage to call the mainland for help, and helicopters arrive to take them home after they have the privilege of witnessing some of the velociraptors attempting to migrate. They watch as the Costa Rican military bombs the island, killing everything on it. None of them are allowed to leave the island, as both Costa Rica and the U.S. have various uses for them, so they are put in a hotel in San Jose. Several weeks later, Grant gets a visit from a mysterious American man who tells him that there are reports of strange lizards migrating across the land. So, we are thrust into a chaotic world where, lo and behold, eccentric CEOs are causing havoc. How apropos.
So just like today's world.
Yeah.
So while you were reading that, I did a quick search because I wanted to know about IPs and where Jurassic Park fell because I was so surprised. I did a top 10 search, didn't hit. I did a top 25, barely squeezed in. So Jurassic Park is like 24th top IP at about 6 billion, according to recent results. And it's tucked right between Game of Thrones and Naruto, the anime.
Right.
Below James Bond, but above Twilight.
Thank God for that. Goodness. I would have massive, what's the word for it?
Orgasm.
The opposite of that. If Twilight beat Jurassic Park, I would have the opposite of an orgasm.
Oh, man, that's funny. What do you think the top 3 IPs are for, like, estimated revenue? Quick side quest here.
Marvel is one of them.
Okay.
Probably can't be a cartoon. So I would say Marvel. I would say, oh, what's that one? My goodness. I can't even think of any. I don't watch movies that often anymore.
So Marvel is the top 3. It's not just movies. It's all any sort of media franchise.
Oh, wow. I'm going to just give up on the second 2. I think Marvel is one of the top 3. Am I right on that at least?
Tunes.
Marvel is 7th.
Top 4, actually. Pokemon is number 1, over 100 billion. Hello Kitty is number 2 at 80 to 90 billion. Winnie the Pooh is 75 billion. Mickey Mouse and Friends is 70 billion. And the 5th one, which I'm surprised you didn't say, thinking about Marvel, Star Wars.
Goodness, yeah. My brain just went blank. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, I suppose. I'm okay with all that because I frankly don't care.
It just surprises me. To your comment, like, oh, well, it's probably not a cartoon. It absolutely is a cartoon for the top 3. So.
Yeah, another one I forgot that just came to me, Harry Potter. Where is that in
11th.
11th.
Mario, 9th. Disney Princesses, 8th.
Huh. And this is just media IPs. This is not movie-specific or anything. Okay. That kind of makes sense.
It's not movie-specific. It's manga, anime, film, comics, book, video game, character brand is what Hello Kitty is categorized as, according to just quick cursory research. TV show. Scooby-Doo's 47th. Still staying strong.
And I suppose how you slice it up. Do you say the top 10 are what's considered successful? Do you say the top 25 are what's successful?
These are billion-dollar brands. I think they're all quite successful. Top 50 is still in the $2 billion range for the bottom one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Billion-dollar brand. Avatar is 49th. The Chronicles of Ryla Kuma? I don't know how to say that.
No clue.
I'm sure it's a Japanese brand. It says animation/brand. It's over $2 billion, but it's less documented. And that's the 50th.
What about Fast and the Furious?
Don't see that on here.
Huh.
Again, cursory research, not fully objective. Lord of the Rings is 17th. Toy Story 15th. Frozen 14th. Gundam 13th.
Ooh. I like that. But
back to it.
Jurassic Park is where we're at. We're watching dinosaurs and watching them kill people.
Yes.
When I first read this book, I was 13 years old, and it blew my little mind. I enjoyed this book immensely. I reread it twice since then, and I enjoyed it still as an adult. To me, it kind of stands the test of time personally, not in any general sense. So when I read it as a kid, I enjoyed it. I read it probably a couple of years ago, and then I reread it for this podcast. Yeah, there's something about it that, again, personally, stands the test of time. There's other books like that for me, and it's probably nostalgia more than anything. But I know I mentioned that numerous times. Needful Things, those are 2 King books. Crichton's The Firm, although I like the movie better, as a parenthetical note. Crichton's The Firm, Crichton's Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Sphere. Something about these stories just continues to resonate with me.
What is it for you? What's the hook?
The hook, it's a simple story, and you're able to immerse yourself in the world quite easily. And I think what Crichton is hinting at, and the vehicle he uses to tell a story, is man's hubris will be his demise always. And Hammond, as much as a gregarious, fun grandpa he is, he's kind of an ass. He's kind of a big ass.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Not kind of. He just is.
Sure. He's a big old ass of a CEO. And he values probably his ego, his image, and attaining whatever he is trying to attain above those things, above everything else.
Do you feel like we got a full breakdown of what his motivation was for building the park? Because the only thing that I can think of is he's like, I'm doing this for the kids. I'm doing this for the kids. And the mix of his hubris, right? Like,
yeah,
because I can, I will. And then his justification was, well, I'm doing it for the kids. Because he goes off on that rant. I want to say part 6. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of us. Or iteration 6 is he talks like to, I can't remember which character he's sitting with, but, the kids are going to love it. This is for the kids. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like,
I think that's when he's talking to, what's her name? Statler?
Is it Gennaro? Maybe.
No, I think he's talking to, what's the woman's name? Ellie Statler. He's talking to her because they're kind of secluded away from everybody else. And she's now telling him, hey, asshole, yeah, Ian was right. And I'm paraphrasing immensely what happened in that scene. But if I'm remembering it correctly, that's when he says...
Are they having ice cream? Because that's the scene that I'm thinking of. But I thought it was a male character.
It could be a male character.
I thought it was Gennaro.
It could be.
Netteri... Well, I'm getting us into iteration 6. So, sorry. Bring us back.
So, I think to finish the answer to your question, the things I said, that's why coming back to this book numerous times has always been enjoyable, because I also agree that man's hubris will be our downfall.
Mm-hmm.
And the story is fun because you get to see it from an adult perspective. You get to see it a little bit from the kid's perspective. I don't know why his beta readers hated the young kid POV. Maybe it did suck. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But whatever we have now is what we have, and it's Jurassic Park from the perspective of two paleontologists, mostly, and a mathematician. And it's just a fun story. Watching the movie as a kid, later when it came out, I enjoyed that too. I'm not really making any comparisons here, and I won't because not the point of our episode today. For me, it's just a fun story.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the way it's told. I enjoy Crichton's writing. I think if we ever cover the Sphere, there's better writing there. It just how it pulls you into the world. It's just good writing. For a popular book, like mass published, it's great stuff, in my opinion.
Well, you made it this far.
Why not go a step further?
Rate the show.
It helps more than you think.
So, Slava, this is curious to me. I just kind of gave a brief overview of the top 50 IPs, cursory research, but there's a pattern in this top 50 as I was skimming through it, and a lot of these intellectual properties, IPs, have a start with child or teen-focused content. So what's fascinating to me is that his beta readers were like, I don't want kid content. But a lot of these multi-billion-dollar companies are kid-focused IPs or start that way. And so this idea, I think, emerges, which is nostalgia fuels recurring revenue because they start with kid stuff, they buy it, they get into it, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Scooby-Doo, Ghostbusters, whatever, Hello Kitty, right, Pokemon. And then when you're an adult, you're like, oh, I have income now, and now I'm going to go spend it. So I don't have a question here necessarily as much as it's an observation that child and teen-focused content does well to create billion-dollar brands.
That makes sense. And I think Spielberg's adaptation of this book did give the kids a lot more play. Well, I don't think. I remember it giving the kids a lot more play. It's still a story about adults building a park and then other adults telling them they're crazy. There's less background information given on the kids. They're just there. But we see them more.
Here's some kids.
Yeah, here's some kids. We see them more and they get more screen time. And we see them, maybe just because it's a visual thing, but we see them more in the movie. They get more play in some sense. In the book, they're still around with Grant, and there's, a bonding that happens between the kids and Grant, because Grant is kind of, I think, a little bit afraid of kids, or maybe he loves kids. I'm mixing the movie and the book a little bit. But the kids and Grant get more play in a different way in the book than they do in the movie.
I think that Grant in the book is more empathetic and emotional to the kids.
Yes.
In the movie, he strikes me as more like, ooh, kids, they're weirder than dinosaurs, to your point.
Yeah.
But in the book, he's asking the young boy, he's like, hey, tell me about your parents. Hey, they just got a divorce. Do you like the new guy? He's okay, I guess. And he's trying to connect with them, as opposed to I don't remember seeing that in the movie.
Right. They kind of grow on him in the movie because of the situation they're put in. So they're forced to grow.
Do you mean the book?
No, in the movie.
Okay.
they grow on him in the movie, whereas in the book, to your point, he's more empathetic to them, and there's less that he has to overcome as he does in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's almost virtually nothing that he overcomes. He's just there trying to help the kids, try to save the kids, and asking the questions that you alluded to.
Yeah. I don't remember this line in the movie where he talks about, I'm a widower, right? His wife died. But in the book, his wife died, which is what I think is a clear pathway where he understands the sorrow of humanity, the difficulty of life, and the forced processing that's required when change happens to you in terms of like your family dynamic, losing a family member, whether it's through divorce or through death. And so I believe it's that attachment and history that he has that gives him the opportunity, again, in the book, to connect with the kids and not have to overcome as much in the book versus the movie.
Yeah. How do you think the story is set up? Because we have the prologue where Dr. Roberta Carter, Bobby, sits in a clinic, and then all of a sudden this helicopter comes down, it's a downpour, and they rush this guy in, and he obviously looks like he's been mauled by an animal. She knows what animal attacks look like. All that unfolds. She, in the back of her mind, knows something is up. And then we're quickly taken to a family on a vacation, and your usual, banter between husband and wife, and the kid is there, and the kid gets attacked. And then everybody's like, it's just a lizard. Yeah, it's a foamy saliva, but something's happening to her skin. It's probably this lizard. What do they call him? The striped basilisk lizard.
Yep.
And everything is kind of dismissed. But you as the reader, you already know.
We know something's
what the
coming.
book is about a little bit. You see it coming, but it's this little, it's not a foreshadowing, this little glimpse into how big the problem of the park is, because these things not only are attacking people on the park premises, they're also attacking random little kids in houses, and a kid gets attacked on a secluded beach.
Yes, it is.
So there's this little glimpse of Hammond has screwed up. And then you see Hammond and his eccentricities and all the stuff that he does. Then they get to the park. There's a guy betraying Hammond. So you already know something's going to happen on this idiot. And he's going to cause something to exacerbate the issue. And pretty quickly, the fences are down.
Mm-hmm.
And the fecal matter hits the proverbial fan.
Yeah.
So how do you like the introduction?
The introduction's great. It sets up this book, which is a thriller. I would also say that, something you've mentioned in the past is the zeitgeist lets us know about the book even if we've never read it before. So, this is my first read-through, and I know what's going to happen, right? Like, you're in school, the Titanic sinks, you hear the movie came out. What do you think is going to happen at the end? Well, it sinks. So really the journey is, how did we get to this point? So we know that there's going to be dino attacks. We know that it's going to be a traumatic event for the characters that's going to take place. And so we read it with expectation and wonder how this came to be. And things that attribute ease into the world, or however you said it earlier, where it's like it's easy to get into the story and the world and believe it. I think it's the short, punchy chapters. It's the sense of inevitability that Crichton creates in his prologue, right? Hey, these things are happening. The doctor's questioning. This person looks like they got mauled. They're not admitting it. We see a kind of out of left field mise en scène where this family is going over here because we don't see them again, right? Hey, the wife thinks she's too fat. The husband thinks she looks great. She wanted to go somewhere else, but it was really just for plastic surgery. And then kid gets eaten basically, and then, or bit, right? And then we hear about that incident a few other times, but the family not so much, right? So he achieves what he wants with the scene and then moves on. But it's short, it's punchy, it feels cinematic. I haven't gotten to rewatch Jurassic Park in a while. I wanted to do it before we recorded. Time didn't allow for that. But having read it now, I want to go back and rewatch it, the original, and see what the translation was like from book to movie, because I really like Spielberg a lot. He, to me, is an inspiration into why I got into filmmaking in the first place with Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. His origin story, too, as a quick side quest here, is Spielberg walked on set, took an empty office, and was just around. And he was just so immersed and ingrained with how stories are told that between the learning he had and the advice that he gave to these sets and these filmmakers, by the time they realized he wasn't supposed to be there because that wasn't his office, they were like, oh, well, let's just hire him, right? So I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically how he got his start, which nowadays, you and I couldn't just walk on set and take an empty office. That's not going to be allowed. But this was like the 70s and 80s, where time was different, right? So to circle back to your question of like, what did I think of the prologue? I think it's a great setup. And I think that this is part of the difficulty that you and I have had in the past, maybe more me, is when books don't set up well, I get frustrated because now it's a slog. And the question I'm always asking is like, well, what do the characters want? And for a thriller, we don't get that question answered till like mid-book, in my opinion, for this book in particular. Rather, we get the setup of, oh, there's something looming. It's this sense of inevitability, which doesn't answer the question that I've complained about in the past of, well, what do the characters want? But rather says something's going on in the world and it's a big problem or it's about to blow up, right? Which gets me hooked in. So.
Absolutely, because how Crichton introduces the reader to the foibles of, advancing technology, specifically here in the realm of biotechnology, he's saying something by telling the story. And the nature of what is to come is foreshadowed in the prologue and in the first part, like the first iteration, right? So a family on vacation experiences a lizard attack. The bites are so severe that nobody can believe they came from dinosaurs. Or, well, forget dinosaurs. Nobody can believe they actually came from a lizard.
Yeah.
They're like, so there's this lizard, is this not? Somebody says, oh, Alice Levin says, hey, it might be a dinosaur. And everybody's like, oh, you're silly and dumb. Dinosaurs don't exist. They're extinct. But to build on your point, what I want to say is Crichton introduces the pieces to the mystery. And we kind of know the mystery in some sense. It's dinosaurs are going to run amok in this park and things are going to happen that are bad. But it's introduced or it's revealed. The introduction is already there in the title maybe. But it's revealed. The mystery is revealed gradually. And you as the reader,
yes,
at least as a first-time reader, you get to formulate theories about what may be happening, how it's happening. Well, let me rephrase again, because we know it's happening, but how it's happening, we get to formulate theories. And how he uses the fractal curve that's credited to Ian Malcolm in the book, how he uses that to show the readers every tragic detail that leads to the destruction of this park or the coming undone, like how it comes undone, the undoing of all of Hammond's great achievements or attempted achievements. So that is fun. A quick aside for folks who don't know, in this book, a fractal is a geometric structure, and it's used for modeling natural and economic phenomena. So being the guy who he is and having the education that he has, this wasn't just pulled out of his rear, right? Or he actually knows what he's doing. So using real-world models, I can say that. Using real-world models, he puts that into the mouth of a character and uses that as a way to reveal that mystery. All the while, the reader is trying to formulate their own. And maybe that's a better answer to your original question, why the story is so appealing to me, is the way it unfolds is not only interesting, it's not only captivating, all those other words, but for the story that he's trying to tell, this is not a distant planet with warring, lords and princes. This is Earth. It's a scientific story. It's based on perceivably real science. So using real-world models, here fractals, that doesn't bog the reader down. It doesn't confuse the reader, but it peels back the onion to the core, and the core is a T-Rex eating a 10-year-old, which doesn't happen, by the way. That's not a spoiler. He eats other people, but not the kids.
They don't taste as good. It's more of a snack than a meal.
Right.
So
it's kind of like aged steak.
Go on. Most of us haven't.
Because if you just
Most
take
of
a
us haven't
cow,
ever had an aged
have
steak.
it
Can you
butchered,
describe it for us?
and slap that thing on a grill without any seasonings or anything, it's not going to taste as good as a well-seasoned aged steak that has time to kind of, I forget the scientific term for it, but sit there and mature. That's not the real term for it. A guy who likes cooking should know this, but
Yeah, he should. French Laundry and all. Something that stuck out to me with the book is, so the narration is written third person limited with a rotating perspective. And the more that we read, the more that I prefer the rotating perspective. And I actually think that there's evidence, though I couldn't present any to you currently, that many readers like the rotating perspective, because I feel like more and more of these style narrations come to be because we're going, oh, I'm seeing Legolas's perspective, I'm seeing Aragorn's perspective, I'm seeing Frodo's, and we go, oh, this is like a full picture of the story itself happening from different people who are suffering from different aspects, but they still are trying to overcome the same thing. In Jurassic Park here, it's we're trying to survive, right? And, I guess I'm kind of having an epiphany here. You've razzed on me before of like, well, the characters are trying to survive. It's like, that's great. It's not enough for me. But in this book, it's more than enough. It's interesting. And I think it's the rotating perspective. What was the book we read recently that had the survival stuff that I complained a little bit about? And you razzed on me for Apocalypse. Right. No rotating perspective.
No. Sorry. The Girl with All the Gifts.
Girl with All the Gifts. No rotating perspective. Not really. We have four characters, and I guess that's not fair because it does rotate to the perspectives.
Yeah, and then you get what you wanted in that second half of the book. The first half of the book you were complaining about because you didn't get that. You don't get, at least in Jonathan's estimation, you don't get.
What do the characters want besides survival?
What do they want? Yeah.
Yeah. And, maybe picking apart my argument here a little bit, it's not just what do they want besides survival, because these people wanted the same thing, right? I think it's that the characters were flat compared to something like Crichton's characters, where like the kids' parents are going through a divorce. We learned that Grant, was it?
Trying to remember.
Yeah, Grant. His wife died, right? We know that Hammond is this basic billionaire who, wanted to make this park for the kids. And I couldn't tell you, but this is kind of where SideQuest came from as a show. It's like, well, how do we pick apart stories in a way that makes them interesting? Well, what if we just try to understand them better? And so we've got Girl with All the Gifts and we've got Jurassic Park, and they're both survival stories, but I like one more than the other. And maybe if you have questions for me about this, it'll help me kind of like pick it apart, and then maybe the audience will be able to walk through it too. Or if you can identify it without me having to pick it apart, of like, why do you think that I was more engaged with Jurassic Park than with Girl with All the Gifts, if they're both survival stories and thrillers?
I think there's more happening in Jurassic Park. What you just said, divorce, dead wife. In Part 2, Chapter 8, called Airport, Dodson, who is a competitor or works for a competitor, finds a IGN employee who's able to be turned into a traitor. And they meet in an airport. It's this movie-esque kind of scene. He's handed, a shaving cream bottle that has a fake insert inside and
a briefcase of cash.
Yeah, a briefcase of cash. The man assures Dodson that's not a problem. He's ready to go. He's going to give him the embryos. The embryos are going to be $50,000 per embryo. In 1991 money, that is a shit ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? That's 15 times 50,000. That is a lot of money. It's another slice of the plot that is part of that onion peeling. We're going to go with that analogy, I guess, for this episode. We're like, oh, dinosaurs are on this island. They're biting the crap out of kids. It bit a little girl on vacation. The park is having problems because they brought in an employee who's got their innards falling out of them. And you have an engine employee that's going to sabotage. Well, not sabotage, but he does do something that sabotages the park. But he's a traitor. He's going to be given this data, not only data, but actual embryos to a competitor who's going to want to build a park somewhere else, I'm assuming, because that's how this crap works. Not only is the peeling back of that onion, of that story, interesting, and captivating. What might happen gets more and more almost grotesque, right? Because you have this eccentric, stupid billionaire who's doing things that are putting people in danger. You have some of his competitors trying to steal these embryos. You have an employee who's a traitor. The possibility of the event, that thing that's, we're all looking forward to as readers going like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen on this island, just builds and builds and builds before we even know what the real problem is going to be besides dinosaurs running amok, right? I think that's part of what makes you like this book better than The Girl with All the Gifts, because they're in a school that gets overrun, then they have to escape, then they're in a town, then they are farther away from the town, and although there is tension there, it's not weaved together the way it's weaved together here.
Yeah, on that point, this brings up the question to me, where is the line between a main plot and subplots? And I think you started sharing about that, but for the audience, I want to just okay, well, what's the main plot of Jurassic Park, right? Let's do a quick dissection here. It's that a billionaire is funding a genetic engineered dino park, and he's bringing experts in to evaluate it, right? So when we have a mise en scène, which is setting the scene, it's French for setting the scene, we need to know the first scenes are going to be the thing that sets the scene. To your point, the prologue, hey, there's a mauling attack, they lie about it. There's a kid who gets bit by a lizard, they don't know what it is, right? So okay, so there's something happening, and it's all tied to this billionaire who's funded a dino park, and the dinosaurs have gotten out, or they've gone from island to mainland, bringing the chaos from its secluded area into main world, right? And then, and I think this is the point you're getting at here, is why Jurassic Park's more interesting to me than Girl with All the Gifts, or kept me intrigued, right? Like I was bought in, I was hooked, I wanted to know more, is there's a weaving of subplots. They were all woven together in a way that kept you engaged. And maybe it's the short attention span today. You and I talk regularly about the data and analytics and YouTube and TikTok and all the socials, and how people's attention spans are disintegrating, basically, where we won't even get 3 seconds to something that doesn't catch us, even if it would be something that we would value. So the subplots that I'm seeing in terms of this book, to get back on track here, is Ian Malcolm, his warnings and chaos theory. That's one subplot. Hammond's delusion of control, another plot, which is directly tied to the main plot. Nedry's sabotage, which you just brought up a minute ago, that's a subplot, and it also builds tension in this thriller. Grant being trapped with the kids and their journey together, and then also Gennaro's redemption, right? Who goes from corporate coward to reluctant participant, basically. I'd say the ways to tell the differences for people, if you're wondering, when I'm reading a book or going through a story, is it the main plot or a subplot? Does it drive the narrative? If the answer is yes, that's main plot. Does it affect all the characters? That's a main plot. Can it stand alone? No, that's the story itself. Is there a thematic focus? That would be the main plot. Effectively, I feel like I'm disintegrating here, my words, but I'll wrap up here with the resolution happens for the main plot in books if it's done well. So the story needs to resolve for the story to end, and that would be more evidence for main plot. And then everything else, for the most part, can mostly be categorized as subplot. Does that feel articulate enough?
I think so. I'm tracking with you. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. I want to continue this theme of the unfolding mystery. So in the second iteration, we're introduced to two more characters, Ian Malcolm and Donald Gennaro. You mentioned Gennaro just a second ago. So we have that peeling back of the onion, the prologue and the first iteration we already discussed. Now you're in the park. As a reader, you have all that information, all that data already. Something's happening in this park that's not good. Ian Malcolm is kind of like the voice of reason here. And he says, you can't predict more than a few seconds into the future. This is on page 83, if you're reading the paperback version. He knew that Hammond's chaotic curiosity, we're being generous here. If we're just saying Hammond has a curiosity, it's definitely chaotic. Pun intended, I guess. Malcolm saying that will lead to massive consequences using that fractal theory, that model. And Hammond becomes indignant at Malcolm's observation. That, again, shows you that Hammond is, well, to use bar language, he's an asshole. But he has a hubris, and he doesn't see past like 2 minutes in front of his face because he's constantly thinking about the money that he's going to make. And Gennaro is also salivating in this section of the book about the money they're going to make. Malcolm's telling them, like, hey, dude, something's going to happen. And his indignation at Malcolm's observation reveals that Hammond has a vulnerable, weak, angry side. So the problems that we were introduced to in the prologue and with the little girl and the workers, I know why this is happening. This guy's a douche. He doesn't really care about his people.
Right.
He doesn't understand that his scientists don't even know the extent of the problems they caused. Because going back to that point I made earlier, they're all supposed to be girls, and they can't live off the island because we give them antidotes to essentially a poison. None of that works. They're off the freaking island.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a little bit of a glimpse, a little bit more peel back. Oh, the problems that I saw, 2 chapters ago, 100 pages ago, whatever it is, 70 pages ago, this page 83 specifically that I'm talking about, it's because of Hammond. Hammond is the problem. And now the reader knows, going forward, Hammond is going to cause more problems.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is connected to what I said I enjoyed about the book. It immerses you. It strings you along. I wouldn't call this a slow burn. You get into it pretty quickly.
No, it's pretty fast-paced. Yeah.
Right. But you're strung along at a faster pace than maybe most books. Nothing's very ambiguous or kind of left unresolved, for lack of a better term. Even though there's a mystery and it takes a while for the full mystery to be revealed, you know what's going to happen is bad, and the small little revelations that you get, they're the hooks. They're constantly through the story. You're like, oh, what's going to happen next? Oh, what's going to happen next? And then again, back to my earlier point again, you start to theorize what might happen as a first-time reader, at least. So, good on Crichton.
The other part to that, which I mentioned a little bit ago, is this idea of shifting perspectives. And, that family, you see them once. That's it. But that adds to the story. The veterinarian, right, who's like, I don't work on people. And then she's given a person as like the prologue. Adds to the story. You're like, oh, attacks are happening. You start putting stuff together, like you said. But let's take that thought and then zoom out a little bit, because the chapters of the book or the sections of the book are called first iteration, second iteration, third iteration, right? And while I was going through it, I was thinking, that's an interesting way to dissect a book or segment your book. Why would you do that? And I started thinking about it. I was like, that kind of dehumanizes the story, right? It also makes it very science-based, and it's like, well, that lines up pretty well with Jurassic Park. So when you first read it, did that jump out at you or just me?
I think just you. I think that it's an interesting naming convention, but I never thought beyond it. An iteration, if we're using scientific language, it's a repetition of a mathematical procedure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you this iteration, we're applying this, whatever this is, an effort or a way of looking at things, or we're using a conclusion from the first iteration to change the second iteration, and it's all based on previous results, previous applications, and typically, in the perfect world, it means that you obtain successfully, or you come closer to a solution. You obtain data successfully that gives you more data to obtain more data, and then finally get a solution to the problem.
Which is Hammond.
But here, the iteration, it keeps getting worse. The iterations are devolving, not evolving.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But that stood out to me, and it's something that very few authors in modern day use this as a technique where they lay out their books in an abnormal fashion. We've seen this in It. We've seen this in Survivor by Palinchuk. And we've seen this in Jurassic Park here. I want to say we also saw it in Roadside Picnic, but correct me if I'm wrong there, where the layout of the story is purposefully in a distinct, non-average or normative fashion, right? Like, the layout of the story is different. I think even Sanderson has added this to the fantasy genre specifically with his epigraphs and doing the same prologue in every book for Stormlight Archive from a different angle. I think it takes a more mature author, and feel free to push back on this if you think otherwise, because King does it with It, where we have, different chapters or different sections. He has one section that's just all headlines, right? Like, that's crazy. Jurassic Park here, iterations, and he lumps his chapters into like, well, this is one scientific iteration, these things go bad, it devolves, iteration 2, and it gets worse and worse, and like proves chaos theory, which I think for the story makes a lot of sense. Maybe that's Crichton's even own philosophy, that hubris adds to chaos theory to provoke it to break at some point, right? I don't know.
No, that makes sense. And I like the way the POVs add to the tension or add to the complexity, that's a better term, of the story. Because here, as the second iteration ends, you have Grant, and one of his desires is to get money for his scientific research. Hammond gives him obscene amounts of money.
Yep.
And Statler is also a paleontologist, and this gives her a chance to look at real freaking dinosaurs. And here, the second iteration ends, it's finally fully, openly revealed the park houses real living dinosaurs. Grant is struck by what he witnesses. He says something like, "Oh, it reminded Grant," well, not he, Crichton writes, "This reminded Grant of oversized giraffes." So Grant is like going through his mind going, "Oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind. It's challenging some of my scientific conclusions." Sattler can't hardly contain herself. There's this mood of excitement and thrill. This is going to be an adventure. But we still, as readers, have this sinister... We don't have anything sinister, but we are keenly aware of something sinister that's going to happen for sure. We know it's going to happen for sure. Grant and Sattler are sort of oblivious, but it's part of those subplots that you talked about. Their intention here is, oh my gosh, I definitely want to be a part of this. I'm going to get a lot of money. I can do my own research. And here I have a real dinosaur. I can do even grander research. But Malcolm and Gennaro, at the end of this iteration, are acutely aware they may be in danger for different reasons. Malcolm because of his theory, chaos theory. Gennaro because he is this corporate, lackey who needs to check all the boxes and figure out risks and needs to figure out risk analysis. And for different reasons, they're like, oh, this might be a bad thing. And Malcolm's definitely like, this is a bad thing. So there's this constant tension and conflict for the reader as you're viewing different POVs. Some of them are positive from the POV of the character, like, oh, this is kind of cool, actually. And others are like, no, this is bad.
Is it?
And then again, this is a bad thing. And again, as a reader, you're like, yep, and Malcolm, I'm with Malcolm. This is a bad thing.
Yeah. Do you think, and maybe you have a little more backstory on this than I do in terms of Malcolm himself, to dive into the character just for a half second. Do you think Crichton purposefully made it so that we side with Malcolm? Is this his bias, right? Like, or did it just happen to unfold that way? Like, I don't know, and maybe you can enlighten me and the audience. How many books has Crichton written before Jurassic Park, right? Is this his first published? I don't think it is, but...
His first published was the Andromeda Strain.
They turned that into a movie too, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, his first book that was published was in 1969. It's called The Terminal Man.
Yeah.
And then his second book, also 1969, was The Andromeda Strain. Wow. That's what it is. Yeah. So, Terminal Man.
Okay. Got it.
And it's about a guy who suffers from violent seizures, so violent that he often blacks out, and when they take hold. Shortly after severely beating two men during an episode, the police escort Benson to Los Angeles Hospital for treatment. Then Dr. Roger McPherson, head of a prestigious neuropsychiatric research unit, is convinced he can cure Benson with an experimental procedure that would place electrodes deep in his brain, effectively short-circuiting the seizures. The surgery is successful, but while Benson is in recovery, he discovers how to trigger the pulses himself. To make matters worse, his violent impulses have only grown, and he soon escapes the hospital with a deadly agenda. That's the hook. So, and then, again, back to the point. 1969, again, Drama on a Strain. 1970, Five Patients. 1975, The Great Train Robbery, another great book that I read when I was a kid. We have Eaters of the Dead. We have Jasper Johns. We have Congo, another book I read by him that's great. That's 80. Between 1983...
So he's a well-serviced author
Yeah.
prior to Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Sphere, 1987. We got another book called Travels. And then in 1990, Jurassic Park.
So back to my question, is he giving us his bias through Malcolm?
I think so.
Okay, that's my question. But let's keep the episode rolling here. Let's talk about one of the themes. I know prior to the episode, you and I were briefly discussing the illusion of control. Why don't you give us a quick diatribe on that? And let's unpack it.
Right. I think it's connected to what I said, hubris of man. And when you have the illusion of control, it probably fuels your hubris if you are a Hammond. Because you have money, you can throw it around, you can buy people, you can buy perceivably loyalty, probably in Hammond's mind, which completely falls apart because a guy will sell your embryos for $50,000 a pop. So he's not paying him that much. Or maybe he's just an asshole and the guy's like, yeah, screw it, I'll sell his stuff. You have him not being able to, I don't want to say control, but understand the science behind everything, because he gets the scientists, he pays them the salaries, he goes, go do this thing. But he's not invested in the process. And he doesn't have to be in the weeds with it, but he's so removed that he doesn't know that his scientists have screwed something up where all the dinosaurs are, in fact, not girls, and yes, they can survive outside the parameter of the park, the premises. They can go to other islands and wreak havoc there. So he is the stereotypical poster boy of a guy who thinks he has control and doesn't.
And the only reason he thinks he has control is money.
Right, exactly.
He can buy it. Therefore, he has control.
Yeah. That's why Malcolm pushes back and says, you can only predict like a few minutes into the future. These are dinosaurs from millions of years ago that are now in a new world. They know nothing about it, whatever dinosaurs can know. We don't know anything about them besides what we can speculate based on fossils. And now we're here together. The atmosphere is different. The world is different. And you have no control because of those things. It's not like you just moved a zoo of tropical animals to a temperate zone or temperate animals to a tropical zone. Like, oh, look, it's a giraffe in Montana. Or, look, it's a Bengal tiger in Florida. Or whatever. Or the opposite. Here you have freaking dinosaurs. Things that haven't existed for millions of years. And Hammond can't see that. But Malcolm keeps pushing on it. And the fact that Hammond won't even entertain what Malcolm has to say and add security measures or say, oh, I haven't thought about this before. Yeah, how do we prevent the problems that Malcolm is saying will happen or could happen? That's the hubris again, because he thinks he's in control, and Malcolm is only there because of some legality that he has to have somebody, be as meticulous and forthright and blunt as Malcolm is. I don't think it's ever clearly stated in the book, but that's my assumption. He needs somebody that's not a yes man to be there. Malcolm's that guy. And instead of taking Malcolm seriously, he's just like, screw you, guy. You're ruining my dream of dinosaurs for the kids.
Right. Well, hearing you talk about that, these are the things that come to mind is Hammond has this illusion of control, which then fuels, he needs scientists to have that control through his money, which fuels the scientists in their hubris to do what he's asked. And it trickles downstream where he's like, all right, I'm going to fund the science with his money and his hubris to go, hey, we can make this, we can make dinosaurs real again. And he thinks that he has control, to your point, simply because he has money. But the thing is, he's outsourcing his control because he doesn't know the science. He's so removed, again, to your point, that he doesn't understand when the scientist is like, hey, we need to do iteration 4 of the dinos. to make them more docile. And he's like, no, these are real. We need it to be real. And this is actually like, kind of zooming out a little bit, this is a question about art as well, where it's like, do you make the art as authentic as possible? Or do you curate it to fit into the audience's categories of being the most engaging, beautiful, insert your adjective here, as possible, but that requires often dumbing it down or, making it child-friendly. The New York Times, I think we've talked about this once or twice in the past, New York Times for many years had their average reading level be 7th grade. Now it's gone down to like 5th grade, which, do what you want with that information in terms of what that means about society. But do you curate it like the scientist asked, like we need to make a new iteration where the dinos are less aggressive and less themselves, or to Hammond's preference, they need to be quote unquote real, but he doesn't even know what that means. I think he finds out in this book, but
yeah. But even that, on, I forget, it's in the late 100s of the pages, Malcolm says, hey, dinosaurs and humans, these humans, us humans, this iteration of humans, have never lived together. And then they talk about an attack that happened, and it happened like within seconds. And Grant is kind of taken aback. And the conversation that they have is, well, lions are not natural man-eaters. They have become man-eaters because of the intersection of man and lions. And this is, lions eat people today, and they've eaten people for thousands of years, but they only do that because of the intersection of humans and lions. Lions by themselves would not go like, hey, I'm going to go swim to that island. I hear there's some humans there. So the same thing here. We're introduced to dinosaurs. They're like a month old. They're not going to go, oh, here I am self-aware. That bipedal thing looks delicious. But because the bipedal thing and the dinosaur who's trying to survive and only knows instincts and is hungry or is threatened, that's why they attack. And Hammond refuses to even entertain the thought that this might be a problem. And if they succeed in making them more tame, now here's where my response to your point is, if they succeed to make them more tame, it's just going to take a little longer for them to start attacking again.
Correct.
Because they're animals that go off on instinct, that act on instinct.
Which feeds into chaos theory, that eventually
right.
Something will break because complex systems break.
Yeah.
To simplify Malcolm's thoughts on that.
Yeah. And as we end part 3, or the third iteration, the chaos that Malcolm predicted, it emerges. It doesn't even, you can't say, oh, now we see more. Boom, here it is. And from the time Malcolm was introduced to us as readers, he's been correct about everything. And he continues to hammer this point. The chaos theory is what is helping him project the problems that are coming. It's what he considers how do I say this? Let me say it this way. He adheres to chaos theory in his predictions of what he considers an unpredictable environment for the reasons we just went over. So not only is this a problem because this is the first time in how many years that humans have interacted with dinosaurs, you also have an amusement park and all the problems and issues that come with that. This is also a zoo. This is also in the middle of the ocean. This is also fraught with Hammond's hubris of not taking things seriously. There's so much going on that should be as bright as the sun. Problems are coming, and this should be abandoned. Despite all this, Hammond's confidence has yet to wane. He continues to scoff in the face of trouble, and the fact that he's a fool becomes more and more clear.
Yep, 100%. Well, I think that covers a large chunk of a lot of things. Certainly not everything. We have a second episode here for Jurassic Park. No guest episode this rundown because it's summer and people are busy, and that's okay. But I like when we get into these themes, we get into how the author wrote the books, we learn more about the authors, and we dialogue about moral or ethical quandaries around these topics. Especially, one of the things I really love is understanding my own preferences for books and kind of honing in on the maturity of authorship, right? Because we both write, we both want to be able to publish some of our own stuff one day, And this is maybe not a clean look, but a look at like what are mature authors doing that have taken off versus other authors who are still published. And again, like that's a really big step. That's huge. But there's a maturity that comes as you continue to be an author. So those are my final thoughts.
I concur. As a resident mathematician and grumpy old guy on this podcast,
You're a resident mathematician?
I am not. I know basic algebra, and then my brain starts to hurt.
I was about to challenge you. All right. I'm glad you sat down. Stay humble in line with the book. Sit down. Be humble.
Thank you, Ian. I was going to say, it's funny that in the book, Ian Malcolm is this balding kind of curmudgeon. And then we have, in the movie, he's, the sexy dude, sexy mathematician.
Yes. It's a choice that Spielberg made, I guess. Or his casting director, or both. Probably both.
Anyway, that's all we have for you folks.
Tune in next time for us to review another theme or two and the second half of the books, which would be the rest of iteration 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Which is a lot happens. More limbs, more dino attacks, and more hubris.
I love it.
See you next time. I have a favor to ask you. If you like what we're doing, the simplest way to support the show is to hit subscribe. In return, we'll keep leveling up, we'll listen to your feedback, and read authors that you suggest. And of course, we'll take side quests along the way.